Well, Space Cats, here we go. It's the last couple of weeks of usable British summer. The last couple of weeks of August. Do you know the story of Thumbelina by Hans Christian Andersen? It just really sparked my imagination as a little girl because it was about a tiny little girl, and that's kind of how I felt. So I wanted to combine that with some observational drawing of a sunflower that grew in my garden last year. If you've just found me, I produce videos almost every Friday on drawing and publishing and all things related to picture books. So if you're ready, let's hop in and see what happens. This is the reference picture of the sunflower that the birds planted last year. It was quite a big sunflower, and as you could see, after it had rained, it looked absolutely beautiful. So I wanted to get those raindrops in as well. The middle of the sunflower where all the seeds are took quite a long time to fill up, but I was determined to get it there. And then also to make some of those little raindrops, just outline them a bit, but leaving some gaps as well. The stem of the sunflower is quite hairy, so it's not straight up and down. It's got lots of little tiny hairs all over it, and I'll be lining that with some more detail when I come to paint it. First job is working quickly, get lots of water on and around that sunflower so that I can do the background, making sure I get in all the crevices and using those blues and purples to contrast what is going to be the yellow and the green of the sunflower. Keeping the paper really wet at all times, I took about 15 minutes to complete this bit. I darkened up the corners down the bottom there, and I also did some up the top as well, and I allowed that colour to seep in where it wanted to go. The sunflower last year had a lot of black and brown seeds with a sort of bluish centre, so I wanted to recreate some of that different colouring. And then using wet in wet, I've given this leaf a lot of texture. So again, it took me a few minutes to complete this, making sure it was staying really wet and then working those colours up and into the leaf. And then giving it my little signature of a few blobs of just water, just to give it that beautiful texture. So the story of Thumbelina is a tiny girl who emerges from a barleycorn plant, or sunflower in my case, for a childless woman who wants to be a mum. One night Thumbelina was kidnapped by a toad who wanted her as a bride for his son. With help from a fish and butterfly, she escaped their dreadful clutches. But lost, she tries to survive out in the winter and is eventually given shelter by a field mouse. She makes friends with an injured swallow and helps him recover, and he eventually comes back for her the next summer, and she flies off with him. But Thumbelina meets a tiny prince who she falls in love with and marries. But the swallow is heartbroken because he loved her too. Hans Christian Andersen's story has a little bit of everything in here. Lots of different themes: kidnap, enforced labour, and unrequited love. To do the petals, what I've done is built up the colours of the yellows and then sort of finding the shadows in between. I started off with a yellow that had a bit of white in it, but I soon realised that actually I didn't need that white because I've got the white of the paper. So especially where the petals turn over and you can see the underside of them, that's where some of those darker shadows need to be. And at the base of the petals where it joins the seed area, there are these little folds that happen like the pleats of a skirt. So again, that's going to need some attention to the detail of that and making sure that I show where those little lowlights and shadows are. I built up the colour in the seed area a bit more, just for a bit more depth to it. And then it's on to those raindrops or dewdrops. And I've used coloured pencils here to make the dewdrops and blended them with a white pencil. So it's got the darker blue or the grey around the outside and a little bit of yellow on the inside to show the petal colour, and then a splodge of white in different places that shows where the highlights are. The folds in the petals themselves are in two colours. I've got ochre and a mid-brown. I did try blending it with white pencil to start with, but actually I found it better when I used a brush and some clean water just to blend those colours and bring them down into the petals a bit more. It just felt a bit more successful for me. And around Thumbelina herself, just to bring her forward, make her pop out a little bit more. And then the stalk has got this hairy texture about it, so I've just put loads of squiggly green lines down, and then with a clean brush and plenty of water I've just done some really loose strokes. This is my white pencil that is also a watercolour pencil, so again the same sort of thing, clean water on a brush and just blending that in. These dark green leaves are the leaves that enclose the flower to start with, so they're a lot darker than the leaves that come out of the stalk, hence the two different green colours. And here's the finished picture. Let me know if you think it's successful and whether you'll be giving something like this a go too. If you'd like further artist tutorials, I have a variety of short courses that will help you. There are real-time sessions looking at painting, drawing and marker pens, among others. And if you're keen on producing your own book, there is a more in-depth course on what you need to know about self-publishing a book with illustrations. And that covers making key decisions, how to make layouts and dummy books, rhythm and pacing, as well as several tutorials on illustrating your book, and a look at the tech. You can either hop over to my website or join me on Patreon for more information. Go on, give it a go! Okay folks, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed that, although I feel a little bit sorry for the swallow. I'm off to continue pulling rhubarb out of the ground, and potatoes, and rose petals, and if I can get hold of that seagull, I'm gonna have stiff words with him. See you next week. Nanu nanu!